What if the real damage to your erections didn't begin in your 60s at all, but quietly years earlier, in your blood, your chemistry, and your nerves, long before the first time your body failed to respond? Most men never see it coming. One morning, you wake up, desire is there, but nothing happens. You tell yourself it's age. You tell yourself it's normal. But inside, something cracks. Confidence fades. Intimacy feels risky. You start avoiding the very moments that once made you feel alive. And what hurts the most isn't just the physical change, it's the silent fear that this is permanent. Here's the paradox that should stop you in your tracks. Many men over 60 lose erections not because their body is broken, but because it's slightly out of balance, slightly more acidic, slightly inflamed, just enough to choke blood flow, block nitric oxide, and keep your nervous system on edge. The shocking part? One of the tools that can help correct that imbalance isn't expensive, isn't a drug, and isn't hidden in a pharmacy. It's something you already have at home. In the next 24 hours, small changes can begin shifting circulation, oxygen delivery, and responsiveness, naturally and safely when done correctly. My name is Dr. Mohit Khera. I'm a urologist with over 30 years of experience, and I've seen firsthand how restoring internal balance can change what men believe is lost forever. Before we go any further, I want to make sure you're not facing this alone. If you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so now and turn on the notification bell. Every video here is created specifically for men over 60 who want real, honest guidance about their health. And as we move forward, let me know you're with me. Type 1 in the comments if this speaks to you, or 0 if it doesn't. Now, let's take a closer look at what's really happening inside your body and how these changes begin to reverse. Benefit number 1. Helps rebalance blood pH for better circulation. Most men are shocked when I tell them this. The slow loss of erections often begins in the blood long before it ever reaches the penis. Not with pain, not with a diagnosis, but with a quiet chemical shift that no one warns you about. You don't feel it happen. You don't see it on a standard checkup. Yet year by year, this invisible change tightens your circulation, weakens blood flow, and slowly distances you from the physical response you once took for granted. As men move past 60, the body naturally trends toward acidity. This isn't because you've done something wrong, it's part of aging. Diet changes, medications, stress, reduced kidney efficiency, less deep breathing, all of it contributes. And when your internal environment becomes too acidic, your blood vessels don't relax the way they should. They become tense, rigid, less responsive. An erection depends on one simple requirement. Blood must flow freely and rapidly into very small vessels. When acidity increases, those vessels subtly constrict. Blood becomes thicker. Oxygen delivery slows. The signal to open fully never arrives with strength. You may still feel desire, but the physical response feels delayed, weaker, or unreliable. Many men internalize this as a personal failure. They tell themselves their masculinity is fading, that their best years are behind them. I've looked into the eyes of men who felt embarrassed, ashamed, even angry at their own bodies. But this isn't about failure, it's about chemistry. Baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, plays a quiet but important role here. It is not a stimulant, it is not a hormone, it doesn't force anything. What it does, when used gently and correctly, is help restore balance. By buffering excess acidity, it allows your blood to move more smoothly. Vessels relax. Circulation improves. Not dramatically in one moment, but consistently over time. And consistency is what the aging body responds to best. I remember a patient in his late 60s who described it perfectly. He said, "Doctor, it feels like something inside me is clenched all the time." His heart was healthy, his testosterone was reasonable, but his circulation was under constant internal tension. Once we addressed that underlying acidity, the tension eased. Blood flow improved. And with it came something more meaningful than erections alone: confidence, relief, a sense of control returning to his body. This is why rebalancing pH matters. When blood flows more freely, more oxygen reaches sensitive tissue. more nutrients arrive, signals travel faster, erections become less forced and more natural. You stop bracing for failure, you stop second-guessing your body. And there is something deeply emotional about that shift. Men often tell me they feel calmer, less frustrated, more present, because when circulation improves, it's not just a physical change, it's psychological. Your body stops fighting itself. I want to be very clear. Baking soda is not magic. It does not override poor sleep, unmanaged stress, or uncontrolled disease. But as a foundational support, especially for men over 60, helping your body return to a more balanced internal state can open the door to improvements you didn't think were still possible. When circulation improves, everything downstream improves as well. That includes the next critical piece most men overlook: the silent inflammation inside blood vessels that blocks performance even when blood pH starts to normalize. And that's exactly where we're going next, because if you don't address inflammation, balance alone won't be enough. Benefit number 2. Reduces silent inflammation inside blood vessels. Here is something that often unsettles men when they hear it for the first time. You can lose erections even when your heart is fine, your cholesterol is controlled, and your doctor tells you everything looks normal. That's because one of the most destructive forces affecting erections after 60 rarely shows up as pain or illness. It works quietly, steadily, and patiently from the inside. That force is chronic inflammation. Inflammation is not always dramatic. It's not the swelling or redness you associate with an injury. In older men, it often exists as a low-level, constant irritation inside the blood vessels themselves. You don't feel it, you don't notice it day to day, but over time, it hardens and irritates the delicate inner lining of the vessels, the endothelium, which plays a crucial role in sexual function. The endothelium is where nitric oxide is released. This is the chemical signal that tells blood vessels to relax and open. When inflammation is present, that signal becomes weak or distorted. Blood vessels lose their ability to respond quickly. Blood flow slows. Sensitivity decreases. Erections become unpredictable, shorter, or disappear entirely. Desire may still be there, but the body hesitates, as if it no longer trusts itself. I have had men sit across from me and say, almost in a whisper, "Doctor, it feels like something inside me is blocking everything." They often assume the problem is testosterone or aging alone. But many times, the deeper issue is inflammation quietly sabotaging the system that makes erections possible in the first place. And because it's silent, men blame themselves. This is where baking soda becomes relevant in a way most men never imagine. Sodium bicarbonate has been shown in multiple studies to activate anti-inflammatory pathways, particularly involving the kidneys and spleen. These organs help regulate immune response. When they are supported, the body reduces unnecessary inflammatory signaling. Essentially, the immune system stops overreacting to normal internal conditions. When inflammation begins to calm, blood vessels soften. They regain flexibility. The endothelium starts functioning more normally again. Nitric oxide signaling improves. Blood flow feels smoother, less restricted. Erections don't feel forced, they feel allowed. What makes this especially important for men over 60 is that chronic inflammation accumulates slowly over decades. Stress, poor sleep, old injuries, medications, metabolic changes, all of it adds up. By the time erections are affected, inflammation has often been present for years. That's why addressing it can feel like lifting a weight you didn't realize you were carrying. Men often describe the change not as sudden arousal, but as relief. A sense that the body is no longer fighting itself. Less pressure in the chest, clearer thinking, more energy throughout the day. This matters because sexual function is not isolated. When inflammation decreases, the entire system benefits. One patient once told me, "It's not just that things work better, I feel calmer in my body." That calm is not accidental. Inflammation keeps the nervous system on edge. Reducing it allows the body to relax into responsiveness rather than tension. I want to emphasize something important here. Baking soda is not suppressing symptoms. It's helping shift the internal environment so the body can regulate itself more effectively. That distinction matters. especially at this stage of life when gentle support is far more effective than aggressive stimulation. When inflammation subsides, blood vessels reopen pathways that have been narrowed for years. Blood begins to move more freely, sensation can return, confidence can rebuild, and often, this improvement sets the stage for something even more critical. Because even when inflammation is reduced and blood can flow again, the body still needs a clear chemical signal to initiate an erection in the first place, and that signal depends on a single molecule that many men lose without ever knowing its name. That's exactly what we're going to talk about next, because without it, nothing truly begins. Benefit number 3. Supports natural nitric oxide availability. There is a moment many men describe with quiet confusion. The desire is there. The emotional connection is there. The memory of how their body used to respond is still vivid. And yet, when the moment arrives, nothing happens. Not because of fear, not because of lack of interest, but because the signal never arrives. For many men over 60, the real shock isn't losing desire. It's losing the internal yes that once made everything unfold naturally. That internal yes is driven by a single molecule most men are never taught about: nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is not a hormone. It's not testosterone. It's a chemical messenger your body releases at the exact moment arousal begins. Its job is simple but critical. It tells your blood vessels to relax. It tells smooth muscle to let go. It allows blood to surge rapidly into the erectile tissue. Without it, erections don't fail because of weakness. They fail because the door never opens. As we age, nitric oxide becomes more fragile. The body produces less of it, and what it does produce breaks down faster. Oxidative stress, chronic inflammation, and acidity all damage nitric oxide before it can finish its job. This is why many men feel like the connection between mind and body has been severed. The signal is sent, but it never reaches its destination. I've had men explain it to me in painfully honest terms. "Doctor," one said, "it's like the switch is broken." His heart was healthy, his blood work was respectable, but his nitric oxide availability was compromised, and no one had ever explained that to him. This is where baking soda enters the discussion in a way that surprises many men. Baking soda does not contain nitric oxide. It doesn't act like medication. What it does is protect the environment nitric oxide needs to survive and function. Nitric oxide is extremely sensitive to acidity. In an overly acidic body, it degrades quickly, it loses potency, its signal weakens. By gently buffering acidity, baking soda helps create conditions where nitric oxide lasts longer and works more effectively. Blood vessels become more responsive. The signal has time to spread. The cascade that leads to erection can finally complete itself. There is something profoundly emotional about this for older men. When nitric oxide signaling improves, erections stop feeling forced. You're no longer waiting, hoping, or testing your body. It responds when it's supposed to. That restoration of trust between mind and body is deeply grounding. One man once told me, "I didn't realize how guarded I had become." He was constantly bracing for disappointment. Once his body began responding again, that tension faded. His confidence didn't come from performance alone, it came from predictability, from knowing his body would show up for him. Scientific studies in athletes have shown that sodium bicarbonate improves vascular performance under stress, in part by supporting oxygen utilization and nitric oxide efficiency. While erections are not athletic competition, they rely on the same physiological principles: rapid vessel dilation, efficient signaling, and clean blood flow. What matters most after 60 is not forcing the body to perform, but removing the obstacles that prevent it from doing what it already knows how to do. Baking soda, when used properly, helps remove one of the most significant obstacles nitric oxide faces: internal chemical instability. I want to say this clearly. If nitric oxide is compromised, no amount of desire can override it. That's why men feel broken. But when nitric oxide signaling begins to return, many men report something unexpected. They wake up differently. They feel more alive in the morning. Their body responds without effort. This is not fantasy. This is physiology doing what it was designed to do under better conditions. But there is still another critical factor. Nitric oxide can open blood vessels, but blood still has to carry enough oxygen to the tissue for erections to feel strong, warm, and sustained. And for many men over 60, oxygen delivery, not blood flow alone, is where the system still falls short. That's where we're headed next, because without proper oxygen reaching erectile tissue, even a perfect signal won't deliver the result you're hoping for. Benefit number 4. Improves oxygen delivery to erectile tissue. Here's something that stops many men cold when they finally hear it. You can have blood flowing to the penis and still struggle with weak or fading erections if that blood isn't carrying enough usable oxygen. This is one of the most misunderstood realities of male sexual function after 60. Men are told to focus on circulation, heart health, and arteries, but almost no one explains that oxygen is the fuel that actually brings erectile tissue to life. An erection is not just a mechanical filling of blood, it is a living response. The tissue inside the penis is highly sensitive and metabolically active. It needs oxygen to expand, to stay firm, and to maintain sensation. Without adequate oxygen delivery, erections can feel dull, short-lived, or strangely disconnected, even when blood technically reaches the area. As men age, oxygen delivery becomes less efficient for several reasons. Red blood cells lose flexibility. Hemoglobin doesn't release oxygen as cleanly. Chronic acidity and inflammation interfere with how oxygen is transferred from blood to tissue. You may still be breathing normally, your lungs may still function well, but the final step, oxygen actually reaching and energizing erectile tissue, can quietly fail. I've had men describe this in deeply personal ways. One man said, "It's like everything is colder than it used to be." Another said, "I feel pressure, but not vitality." These aren't psychological complaints. They are signs of reduced tissue oxygenation. When oxygen is lacking, smooth muscle inside the penis cannot fully relax or sustain expansion. Blood enters, but it doesn't stay. Sensation fades sooner than it should. This is where baking soda plays a subtle but important role. By helping rebalance internal pH, baking soda improves how hemoglobin binds to and releases oxygen. Oxygen delivery is highly dependent on the acid-base environment of the blood. When the body is too acidic, hemoglobin holds onto oxygen instead of releasing it. The tissue starves, even while blood passes through. When the environment becomes more balanced, oxygen is released more efficiently to the tissues that need it, including erectile tissue. This difference doesn't announce itself dramatically. It shows up as warmth, fuller sensation, better endurance, a sense that the body is responding all the way through instead of giving up halfway. One older patient described it simply, "Things feel alive again." That word matters. Oxygen is life at the cellular level. When it arrives properly, tissue responds with strength and sensitivity. Erections don't just start better, they feel better, more natural, more complete. There is also an emotional layer to this that men rarely talk about. When oxygen delivery improves, men often report feeling less anxious during intimacy. Not because they're trying harder, but because their body feels nourished instead of strained. The fear of losing firmness mid-moment begins to fade. Confidence doesn't come from effort, it comes from trust in your own physical response. It's important to understand that oxygen delivery is not something you can force. You can't will it into tissue. You have to support the conditions that allow it. Gentle pH balance, reduced inflammation, and easier blood flow allow the body to do this naturally. Baking soda supports that foundation when used appropriately, especially in men whose bodies have slowly drifted toward acidity over time. This is also why some men notice broader benefits: more energy during the day, clearer thinking, better recovery after physical activity. All of these are connected to oxygen availability. Sexual function simply reveals the issue sooner because it is so dependent on precise physiological timing. But there is still another piece many men overlook. Oxygen may reach the tissue, circulation may improve, nitric oxide may signal correctly, but if the tiny muscles responsible for trapping blood inside the penis lack energy, erections still won't last. And that energy comes from deep inside the cell, where most men never think to look. That's where we're going next, because even the best blood and oxygen mean little if the cellular engines responsible for holding an erection are running on empty. Benefit number 5. Supports mitochondrial energy in smooth muscle cells. Many men are stunned when they learn this truth. Most erections don't fail because blood can't get in, but because the body can't hold it there. The moment starts strong, hope rises, and then, without warning, everything fades. That fading is often blamed on age, nerves, or lack of desire. But deep inside the penis, far below awareness, there is another reason most men never hear about. The tiny muscles responsible for maintaining an erection simply run out of energy. Inside the penis are layers of smooth muscle cells whose sole job is to trap and hold blood once it flows in. These cells have to stay relaxed, strong, and responsive for an erection to last. And just like every muscle in the body, they depend on energy. Not motivation, not willpower. Energy produced at the cellular level. That energy comes from structures called mitochondria. Mitochondria are often called the power plants of the cell. They convert fuel into usable energy. When they work well, muscles do their job effortlessly. When they slow down, muscles fatigue quickly. And as men age, mitochondrial function declines, especially in tissues exposed to chronic acidity, inflammation, and oxidative stress. Unfortunately, smooth muscle cells in the penis are particularly sensitive to this kind of internal stress. I've listened to men explain this problem in ways that are almost poetic. One said, "It's like the engine cuts out halfway through." Another said, "Something just gives up." That sensation of giving up is real. When mitochondria are underperforming, smooth muscle can no longer sustain the work required to keep blood trapped in the penis. Blood leaks back out, firmness fades, and the experience leaves men feeling confused and defeated. What makes this especially painful is that desire is often still present. Emotion is still there, connection is still there, but the body doesn't have the strength to follow through. That mismatch creates frustration and shame many men carry silently. This is where baking soda plays a surprisingly meaningful role. One of the major enemies of mitochondrial function is excess acidity. Acidic environments interfere with energy production at the cellular level. They increase lactic acid buildup and disrupt the enzymes mitochondria rely on. When cells are constantly fighting acidity, they produce less energy and fatigue faster. By gently buffering acidity, baking soda helps create an environment where mitochondria can work more efficiently. It reduces metabolic strain. It helps cells generate energy more sustainably. Over time, this support allows smooth muscle cells to relax and hold blood longer rather than tiring out prematurely. Men who experience this shift rarely describe it as a dramatic surge. Instead, they describe steadiness. Durability, a sense that their body no longer collapses under pressure. One man in his late 60s told me, "It doesn't feel forced anymore, it feels supported." That word is important. Support allows the body to function without panic or strain. There is also an emotional change that comes with restored cellular energy. Men stop rushing, stop bracing for failure, stop monitoring every sensation. When they trust their body's ability to maintain an erection, intimacy becomes calmer and more natural. That calm itself further supports erectile function by reducing stress hormones that sabotage blood flow. This benefit extends beyond the bedroom. Improved mitochondrial efficiency often shows up as better stamina during daily activities, less fatigue, and quicker physical recovery. Sexual function simply exposes the issue more clearly because it demands sustained muscular performance. It's important to understand that this isn't about pushing the body harder. It's about removing the conditions that drain it. Aging bodies respond best to support, not force. Baking soda, when used responsibly, contributes to that supportive environment by reducing the chemical stress that quietly starves cells of energy. But even with better cellular energy, smooth muscles can only do so much on their own. Their performance is heavily influenced by hormones, especially testosterone, and how well the body can actually respond to it. Many men are shocked to discover that it's not low testosterone holding them back, but something far more subtle. That's where we're going next, because unless your body can hear and respond to hormonal signals again, even strong muscle energy won't fully restore what you're hoping to regain. Benefit number 6. Improves testosterone receptor sensitivity. This is one of the most frustrating truths men over 60 ever hear, and when it finally sinks in, it explains years of confusion. You can have normal testosterone levels and still feel empty, tired, disconnected, and sexually unresponsive. Blood tests say you're fine. Doctors say you're fine, but deep down, you know something is missing. The problem is not always how much testosterone you have. It's whether your body can still hear it. Testosterone works like a message, but a message is useless if the receiver is damaged, dulled, or turned down. Inside your muscles, blood vessels, brain, and erectile tissue are testosterone receptors, tiny docking stations that listen for the hormone and respond. When they work, testosterone fuels desire, confidence, blood flow, and firmness. When they don't, the signal fades into silence. As men age, these receptors often become less sensitive, not because testosterone disappears overnight, but because years of chronic inflammation, acidity, oxidative stress, and metabolic strain create static in the system. The hormone knocks, but the door barely opens. Men feel unmotivated. Desire weakens. Erections feel unreliable, and many men are told the wrong solution, just raise testosterone higher. I've seen too many men go down that path. More hormone, higher doses, minimal improvement, more side effects. That's because resistance, not deficiency, is often the real problem. One man said something that has stayed with me for years. He looked at me and said, "Doctor, I feel like the spark is there, but nothing ignites." That spark was testosterone. The ignition system was damaged. This is where baking soda becomes relevant in a way that surprises most men. Baking soda does not increase testosterone production. It does something more subtle and often more powerful. By gently reducing internal acidity and helping calm chronic inflammation, it improves the environment in which receptors operate. Receptors are proteins. Proteins are extremely sensitive to pH and inflammatory stress. When the environment is hostile, they malfunction. When that internal environment begins to stabilize, receptors become more responsive again. Testosterone doesn't need to be higher, it just needs a clear path. Men often report that their drive feels more natural, not forced. Motivation returns. Confidence shifts quietly, but unmistakably. They feel more like themselves again, rather than chasing a version of themselves that feels out of reach. This change often affects more than sexual function. Testosterone receptors exist throughout the body. When sensitivity improves, men sustain muscle better, recover faster, think more clearly, and feel emotionally steadier. Sexual response improves as part of a broader return to balance, not as an isolated event. What makes this emotionally powerful is that men stop blaming themselves. They stop wondering why effort doesn't work. They realize their body wasn't ignoring them. It was overwhelmed. Once conditions improve, the body listens again. I want to emphasize something important here. Supporting receptor sensitivity is not about aggression. It's about clearing interference. The older body responds best when you stop yelling at it and start supporting it. Baking soda, when used responsibly, contributes to that calmer internal setting where signals can finally land. Men often describe this phase as a return of quiet confidence. Not a sudden rush, not reckless desire, but a grounded sense of capability. That kind of confidence changes how men carry themselves, how they connect with their partners, and how they view aging itself. Yet even when hormone signaling improves, there is another layer most men don't consider. Your body still has to process hormones efficiently and keep your internal system clear. And that responsibility falls heavily on two organs that quietly shape erectile health more than most men ever realize. That's where we're going next, because until the liver and kidneys are supported, hormonal signals, even when heard, can quickly become distorted again. Benefit number 7, light detox support for liver and kidneys. Here's a reality that catches many men off guard, and once they hear it, they can't unhear it. Your erections are shaped not only by blood flow and hormones, but by how clean and efficient your internal filtration systems are. Long before men notice sexual changes, the liver and kidneys often begin struggling quietly under a lifetime of accumulated load, and when these organs slow down, erections are among the first functions to suffer. The liver and kidneys are your body's master regulators. They filter waste, manage acid levels, process hormones, and clear inflammatory byproducts from the bloodstream. When they are overburdened, blood becomes heavier, thicker, and less responsive. Hormones become distorted, not because they disappear, but because they aren't processed correctly. Signals that should be clean become muddy. Erections, which rely on timing and precision, fade into inconsistency. Many men describe a particular sensation without knowing its origin. They say things like, "I feel weighed down," or "It's like something inside me is clogged." This isn't imagination. When metabolic waste, excess acid, and unused hormones build up, the body operates in a constant state of subtle toxicity. Not enough to cause immediate illness, but enough to sabotage performance. As we age, kidney efficiency naturally declines. The liver works harder to compensate. Medications accumulate. Hydration decreases. Acidic byproducts are cleared more slowly, and the body adapts by shutting down non-essential functions. Sex, from a survival standpoint, is considered non-essential. So when the system is stressed, erections are often the first thing to weaken. This is where baking soda plays a quiet but important role. Sodium bicarbonate helps reduce the acid burden the kidneys must process, making filtration easier. It supports a healthier urinary pH, which eases kidney strain. When kidneys aren't constantly fighting acidity, they can redirect energy toward proper filtration instead of damage control. The liver benefits as well. By reducing systemic acidity and inflammation, baking soda helps improve bile flow and metabolic efficiency. The liver can process estrogen, cortisol, and residual hormones more cleanly. Testosterone doesn't get trapped or misconverted as easily. Blood quality improves. Circulation feels lighter, freer. Men who experience this shift often don't describe it as sexual at first. They say they feel clearer, less sluggish, less bloated, less tense, and only later do they notice something else changing. Erections begin showing up more reliably, not hurried, not forced, just present. One patient once told me, "It feels like my body isn't fighting itself anymore." That's what happens when filtration improves. The internal environment becomes less hostile. Blood moves more efficiently. Hormones find their proper rhythm again. There is a deep emotional relief that comes with this. Many older men feel betrayed by their own bodies. When detox pathways are supported and function improves, that betrayal softens. Trust begins to return, not just sexually, but physically as a whole. It's important to understand that this isn't about harsh cleansing or extreme detox programs. Aging bodies respond poorly to aggression. What they need is relief. Baking soda provides gentle support, not shock. It helps restore balance rather than force change. When the liver and kidneys function better, everything downstream benefits. Circulation becomes smoother, hormonal signaling becomes clearer, energy redistributes itself toward function instead of survival. Erections are simply one visible sign of deeper internal repair. But there's another factor that quietly undermines both kidney health and hormone balance. One that many men struggle with daily without realizing its true impact. It creeps in through cravings, weight gain, and stubborn belly fat. And if it isn't addressed, it can undo much of the progress we've just discussed. That's exactly what we'll explore next, because controlling this hidden saboteur often marks the turning point between lingering frustration and real, lasting improvement. Benefit number 8. Helps reduce sugar cravings and belly fat. Most men don't realize this until it's said out loud, and when it is, it hits hard. The quiet growth of belly fat after 60 isn't just cosmetic. It's actively working against your erections every single day. That weight around the midsection isn't passive. It's biologically active tissue, and it interferes with hormones, blood flow, and confidence in ways that few men are ever warned about. Many older men tell me the same story. They eat less than they used to. They walk more. They've cut back on junk food, and yet the belly stays. Along with it comes slipping energy, fading drive, and erections that no longer feel dependable. What's confusing is that cravings seem stronger than ever. Late at night, after dinner, right when discipline feels hardest to summon. This isn't weakness, it's chemistry. That abdominal fat produces an enzyme called aromatase. Aromatase converts testosterone into estrogen. The more belly fat you carry, the more testosterone is quietly stolen from you. Not gone, but rerouted. Desire dulls. Motivation fades. Erections become inconsistent. And men often blame aging, when in reality, their own fat tissue is working against them. Sugar cravings play a central role here. Blood sugar spikes trigger insulin surges. Insulin promotes fat storage, particularly in the abdomen. Those cycles repeat daily, tightening the hormonal trap. And once again, acidity and inflammation make the problem worse. Acidic internal conditions increase insulin resistance, making cravings stronger and fat harder to lose. This is where baking soda steps in, not as a weight loss product, but as a stabilizer. By helping rebalance internal pH, baking soda supports steadier blood sugar control. When blood sugar doesn't swing as sharply, cravings lose their grip. Men often report that urges for sweets feel quieter, more manageable, less urgent. That change may seem small, but it's profound. When cravings subside, men regain a sense of control. Eating patterns improve naturally. Protein intake increases. Evening snacking fades. And slowly, stubborn abdominal fat begins to respond. As that fat recedes, testosterone conversion slows. Hormonal balance starts to reclaim lost ground. Men describe this phase as regaining authority over their body. One told me, "I don't feel hijacked anymore." That matters. Feeling in control changes posture, confidence, and how men show up in intimate moments. Erections aren't just about blood vessels, they're about belief. Belly fat erodes that belief quietly over time. As weight decreases, circulation improves. Inflammation drops. Hormones stabilize. Erections benefit not because of a single mechanism, but because the entire metabolic environment becomes more supportive. Men often notice their waistline shrinking before performance improves, and that's a good sign. It means the body is shifting systems before signals become obvious. There's also an emotional layer here that deserves respect. Many men feel ashamed of their belly. They avoid mirrors, avoid intimacy, avoid initiating. When that weight begins to shift, even gradually, shame softens. Desire returns not just physically, but emotionally. Men feel worthy of closeness again. Baking soda doesn't burn fat, it doesn't override physiology. What it does is help remove one of the chemical barriers that keeps men trapped in cycles of craving and storage. And once that barrier lifts, the body often surprises men with how willing it is to respond. But even with better blood sugar control, reduced fat, and improving hormones, one final system can still sabotage erections if it remains stuck in tension: the nervous system. Because when stress dominates the body, it doesn't matter how healthy your blood or hormones look on paper. That's what we need to address next, because if your body doesn't feel safe enough to relax, it will never fully allow the response you're hoping for. Benefit number 9. Helps calm the nervous system. There is a hard truth many men don't want to face, yet it explains more erectile failure after 60 than most medical charts ever will. If your nervous system doesn't feel safe, your body will shut erections down, no matter how healthy your heart, hormones, or blood flow appear. Erections are not just a physical event, they are a neurological permission slip. And for many older men, that permission has quietly been revoked. I've had men look at me with frustration and say, "Doctor, I want to be close, but the moment arrives and my body freezes." This isn't a lack of desire, it's the nervous system pulling the emergency brake. As men age, stress accumulates differently. Years of responsibility, loss, health scares, poor sleep, chronic inflammation, and unresolved tension push the nervous system into a constant state of alert. The body lives in on-guard mode. In this state, the sympathetic nervous system dominates. This is your fight or flight system. It's designed for survival, not intimacy. When it's active, blood is directed toward the heart and muscles. Digestion slows. and blood flow to the penis is intentionally reduced. From a biological standpoint, arousal is irrelevant when the brain senses threat or tension, even if that threat is invisible. What makes this deeply painful for men is that it often feels like betrayal. They still love their partner, they still want closeness, but their body reacts as if intimacy itself is dangerous. Shame creeps in, anxiety builds, and that anxiety only reinforces the shutdown. Many men stop initiating altogether, not because they don't care, but because failure feels too costly. Here's what most men don't realize. Chronic acidity and inflammation amplify this nervous system imbalance. When the body is inflamed, nerve signaling becomes erratic. Stress hormones stay elevated. The brain interprets internal chemical chaos as danger. The parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and relax system responsible for erections, never fully activates. This is where baking soda plays an unexpected role. By reducing systemic acidity and calming inflammatory signals, it helps quiet stress responses at a deep physiological level. Research has shown that bicarbonate can influence how the kidneys and spleen communicate with the brain's immune centers, reducing unnecessary stress signaling. When the body's internal alarm system softens, the nervous system shifts naturally out of defense mode. Men often describe this change in emotional terms rather than physical ones. They say they feel calmer, less reactive, less tense. There's a subtle sense of ease that returns to the body, and when this happens, something important follows. Erections begin to occur without forcing, without performance anxiety, without mental self-monitoring. One older man told me, "It feels like my body finally trusts the moment again." That trust is everything. Erections require surrender. The body must open, not brace. When the nervous system is calmer, arousal can unfold rather than be chased. This calm also improves emotional connection. Men become more present, more affectionate, less guarded. Intimacy stops feeling like a test and starts feeling like a shared experience again. That shift alone can restore confidence many men believed they had lost permanently. It's important to understand that this isn't about numbing emotions or dulling desire. It's about restoring balance. Baking soda doesn't sedate the nervous system. It removes unnecessary internal stress so the body can regulate itself. Especially after 60, regulation, not stimulation, is the key. When the nervous system relaxes, blood flow improves, hormones signal more clearly, and erections are allowed rather than demanded. This is why men who address nervous system health often see improvements even before they focus on technique or supplementation. But there is still one final piece that ties everything together: blood flow, oxygen, hormones, energy, calm. They all converge through a simple combination that helps the body align these systems at once. And when men use it correctly, the results often surprise them the most. That's what we'll uncover next, because this final step doesn't force change. It amplifies everything you've already begun to restore. Benefit number 10. Works best when combined with lemon or apple cider vinegar. Here's the moment that makes many men lean forward, because it sounds almost unbelievable. The difference between baking soda doing a little and baking soda doing something meaningful for your erections often comes down to what you pair it with. On its own, baking soda can help rebalance internal chemistry, but when it's combined with lemon juice or apple cider vinegar, something far more comprehensive begins to happen inside the body, quietly, steadily, and in a way that older systems recognize immediately. This is not about mixing ingredients for intensity. It's about creating cooperation. Lemon and apple cider vinegar are acidic on the tongue, but once inside the body, they trigger alkaline byproducts that support digestion, circulation, and liver function. When they meet baking soda, a gentle reaction occurs that signals the body to reset rather than resist. Many men feel this before they can explain it. Their gut feels lighter. Their breathing feels deeper. Their mornings feel less heavy. Why does this matter for erections? Because everything we've talked about so far, blood flow, oxygen delivery, nitric oxide, cellular energy, hormone sensitivity, nervous system calm, depends on coordination. Older bodies don't respond well to isolated solutions. They respond when systems start talking to each other again. This combination supports that conversation. When digestion improves, inflammation decreases. When bile flow improves, hormones are processed more cleanly. When the liver and gut communicate effectively, estrogen is cleared more efficiently, cortisol regulation improves, and testosterone signaling becomes steadier. When internal pH stabilizes across multiple organs, blood vessels respond with greater ease. Erections don't feel like they're being pulled from a reluctant body. They feel like a natural outcome of balance returning. Men who try this combination often describe a subtle awakening. They wake up clearer, more alert, less foggy. They feel more present in their body throughout the day. And later, without anticipation or pressure, they notice something else. Their body responds when intimacy begins, not dramatically, not forcefully, simply reliably. There is something deeply emotional about that reliability. One older man told me, "I didn't realize how braced I had become." He had learned to expect disappointment. When that expectation loosened, intimacy stopped feeling like a risk and started feeling like connection again. This combination doesn't demand effort. It doesn't push the body into overdrive. It aligns systems that have drifted out of sync over time. That's why it feels different to men over 60. It respects the body's pace. It supports restoration rather than stimulation. I want to be clear about something important. This is not a magic ritual. It's a foundation, a way to help the body remember how to regulate itself more effectively. Especially after decades of medications, stress, and internal imbalance, gentle coordination often produces more meaningful results than aggressive intervention. What surprises many men is that the benefits extend beyond sexual health. Mood stabilizes, cravings decrease, digestion improves, sleep deepens, and confidence grows, not because of one outcome, but because the body feels more trustworthy again. There's a quiet dignity to that kind of improvement. Men stop chasing solutions and start listening to their bodies. They become patient instead of desperate, curious instead of ashamed. And that emotional shift may be just as important as any physiological change. This is why I often tell men that the goal isn't to fix erections. The goal is to support the conditions that allow erections to happen naturally. Baking soda paired thoughtfully with lemon or apple cider vinegar helps bring multiple systems back into harmony at once. Erections benefit because the body benefits first. But here's where things get even more interesting. Even with all 10 benefits working together, balance, flow, signaling, energy, calm, there is one more factor that can dramatically influence how quickly and deeply the body responds. It's something almost every man uses daily without thinking, and almost no one connects it to erectile recovery. That's where we'll go next, because benefit number 11 often becomes the missing piece for men who feel they've done everything right but aren't quite seeing the change they want yet. Benefit number 11 helps the body rehydrate more effectively at a cellular level. Here's a fact that surprises many men when they finally connect the dots. Chronic, low-grade dehydration is one of the most common and most ignored reasons. Erections weaken after 60, not dramatic thirst, not dry mouth, but cellular dehydration that slowly reduces blood volume, thickens circulation, and leaves erectile tissue undernourished even when you think you're drinking enough water. Most men assume hydration is simple. You drink water, you're hydrated, but aging changes how the body uses fluids. The kidneys conserve differently. Electrolyte balance shifts. Cells lose their ability to pull water inside efficiently. And without enough intracellular hydration, blood becomes more concentrated. Flow slows. Oxygen delivery drops. Erections, which depend on rapid fluid movement into delicate tissue, become less reliable. I've had men tell me, "Doctor, I drink water all day." And yet their circulation tells a different story. What they're experiencing isn't lack of intake, it's poor absorption. Water passes through without ever fully hydrating the cells that need it most. This is where baking soda plays a role few men expect. Sodium bicarbonate affects how fluids move between the bloodstream and cells. In small, appropriate amounts, it helps optimize electrolyte balance and supports better fluid distribution. When acid load is reduced, cells become more receptive to hydration. Water doesn't just circulate, it penetrates. When hydration improves at the cellular level, blood volume stabilizes. Circulation becomes smoother. Blood pressure often normalizes. Erectile tissue, which relies on precise fluid dynamics, responds more fully. Erections feel firmer not because of stimulation, but because tissue is properly nourished. Many men describe this change subtly. They say they feel less stiff in the morning, less fatigued, less foggy, and later they notice erections feel fuller, warmer, and easier to sustain. That fullness is hydration expressing itself through function. There's something emotionally grounding about this realization. Men stop blaming effort or desire and start understanding support. The body wasn't failing. It was dry at the cellular level, struggling to maintain volume and pressure where it mattered most. Proper hydration also reduces stress on the heart and kidneys, improves oxygen transport, and supports nitric oxide efficiency. All of these systems converge during arousal. When hydration improves, coordination improves. Erections don't require forcing, they unfold. What's important here is not excess, it's balance. Baking soda does not flood the body with sodium when used responsibly. It supports mineral equilibrium that allows water to do its job. Especially after 60, the body thrives on equilibrium, not extremes. Men who experience this shift often regain confidence quietly. They stop second-guessing their body's capacity. That confidence feeds relaxation, which further enhances response. It becomes a positive cycle instead of the anxiety-driven spiral many older men know too well. And perhaps the most meaningful part is this. Hydration is something men engage with every single day. When that daily habit starts working with the body instead of passing through it, the effects ripple outward into energy, mood, circulation, and intimacy. When you look back at all 11 benefits together, balance, reduced inflammation, restored signaling, oxygen delivery, cellular energy, hormone sensitivity, detox support, metabolic control, nervous system calm, system coordination, and finally effective hydration, you begin to see the larger picture. Erections are not an isolated function. They are a reflection of how well the body is communicating with itself. That realization changes everything. Because when men understand that improvement isn't about chasing one fix, but about restoring harmony across the system, hope becomes realistic again. And that's exactly where I want to take you next, into the closing message, where everything we've discussed comes together in a way that may change how you see your body, your age, and what's still possible from this point forward. Conclusion. What this really means for men over 60. If you're still with me, it tells me something important about you. It tells me you haven't given up on your body, your health, or your sense of self. And that matters more than any supplement, test result, or diagnosis. Because what we've talked about here isn't really about baking soda. It's about understanding your body at a stage of life when most men are told to quietly accept decline. Over the course of their 60s and beyond, many men are made to feel that losing erections is inevitable, that it's simply the price of time. But what you've seen through these 11 benefits is a very different truth. Erectile function after 60 is not a single switch that turns off. It's the outcome of many small systems drifting out of balance, and it's also something that can improve when those systems are supported properly. We talked about blood becoming more acidic and how that tightens vessels instead of letting them open. We talked about silent inflammation that damages the very lining responsible for signaling erections. We looked at nitric oxide, oxygen delivery, and the energy factories inside smooth muscle cells that must work together for firmness to last. We addressed testosterone not as a number, but as a message that needs a clear receiver. We talked about the liver and kidneys, organs most men never associate with sexual health, quietly shaping blood quality and hormone balance. We faced belly fat, sugar cravings, and the hormonal interference they create. We acknowledged the nervous system, the part of you that must feel safe before your body can respond. We explored system-wide coordination through simple combinations, and finally, hydration at the cellular level, where blood volume and tissue nourishment truly begin. When you step back and look at all of this, the lesson becomes clear. You are not broken. Your body is not betraying you. It has simply been operating under stress, imbalance, and neglect for longer than anyone ever explained to you. And while aging changes the body, it does not erase its ability to respond to support. For older men, the goal is not force, it's restoration. It's easing the internal pressure so the body can remember its rhythms again. It's working with your physiology instead of fighting it. That's why gentle, consistent changes often produce deeper results than aggressive interventions ever could. There is also something deeply human here. Many men lose more than erections. They lose confidence, closeness, and identity. When physical response weakens, emotional distance often follows. What this conversation offers is not just information, but permission. Permission to care about your body. Permission to ask questions. Permission to believe that improvement is still possible. Baking soda is not a miracle. No single thing is. But when used thoughtfully, it can be a tool, a starting point for men who want to reconnect with their health in a meaningful way. Paired with hydration, movement, breath, sleep, and medical guidance when needed, it reminds the body how to regulate itself. As a physician, and as someone who has listened to men at their most vulnerable for decades, I want you to take one thing with you. Aging does not mean surrender. It means adaptation. And when you adapt with understanding instead of fear, your body often responds in ways you didn't expect. You still deserve strength. You still deserve intimacy, and you still deserve to feel at home in your body. Thank you for trusting me with this conversation. If this message resonated with you, if even one part of this conversation made you feel understood, hopeful, or more in control of your health, then I want to ask you to take a simple but meaningful step right now. Please give this video a like. Not for algorithms, not for popularity, but so this message can reach other men over 60 who are quietly struggling and don't know where to turn. If you know a friend, a brother, a neighbor, or someone you care about who might benefit from hearing this, share this video with them. Sometimes one honest conversation can change the direction of a man's life. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Type 1 if this content spoke to you or gave you a new perspective. Type 0 if it didn't, and tell me what you'd like me to cover better. I read these comments because this channel exists for you, not at you. And if you believe in honest, respectful, science-based health education made specifically for older men, consider supporting this channel through a small donation or membership. Your support helps keep this information free, independent, and available to men who need it most. You matter. Your health matters, and by engaging, you're helping other men realize they're not alone.